Mr. President.
Senator from Oklahoma.
Well, Mr. President, amid all this, the unfounded and uncorroborated accusation and attacks on a fine jurist, I think it's important for us to remember that other things are happening here at the same time. For one thing, I would only make one comment about the comments of the previous speaker, and that is that the program that was somewhat accurately described actually started in not the Trump administration, but the Obama administration. But what I want to say is that something really significant is about to happen. That is something we've been waiting for a long time. Now, if you're not on the Commerce Committee, you're not dealing with this issue, or actually the Public Works, there are 3 committees dealing with it, you wouldn't be aware of how significant the vote coming up really is. We're going to be voting to reauthorize the FAA. This is something we've been trying to do now for many years, and this is actually a 5-year reauthorization. Now, that's significant. It's been, last time we did a 5-year reauthorization of the FAA was back in the 80s. And now it's a huge win, this thing is, for not just the obvious good things that are going on in what we need to be doing to update the system that we're working with, but if you single out general aviation into pilots, it's really, it's really a big, major deal. The legislation needed investments in our national airport infrastructure, and it supports the general aviation community. It improves commercial service for the flying public and streamlines the FAA regulatory process, eliminating a lot of the red tape that goes along with any bureaucracy. It enhances aviation security and promotes responsible and safe integration for drones in our national airspace. Now, as an active pilot, I'm especially pleased that many pilot protections I fought for on this bill. In fact, I'm very proud that I actually introduced in committee and was able to get in the bill 6 of my amendments that I think are, in fact, I know are very significant, and they mostly address general aviation. It's going to have more transparency in communicating with the FAA. We've heard the stories about some of the FAA enforcement proceedings and how, and which is common to a lot of bureaucracies. It strengthens one area, the notice to airmen. That's called NOTAMs, N-O-T-A-M-S. NOTAMs are notifications to people who are pilots, to let them know if they're going to land on a runway, if there's a problem on the runway, if it's under construction or something like that. And it came from a personal experience that I had when I landed on one that was under, that there was work on, but there are no NOTAMs, so there's no way of warning people. I remember so well, I said, well, where are the NOTAMs if you say there are NOTAMs? And they said, well, that's for you to find out. Well, this changes all that. So we have the NOTAM reform that's in there. It includes the Volunteer Pilot Protection Act. That's kind of like the Good Samaritan Act. I remember, about 30 years ago, I was mayor of Tulsa at that time, and they're on the island of Dominica, not to be confused with the Dominican Republic, was a radio conveyor that reached the entire Central America and a lot of South America, the Gospels over the programs, and it was wiped out by a hurricane. I remember getting 12 pilots together and 12 aircraft together and going down to take medical supplies, take food, and all these things down to that island. Actually had to fly through a hurricane to get down there. But there were 4 people that were going to go and did not go because they might incur some kind of liability. They might do something on the way that would create that problem. Well, the Good Samaritan law that we have that are there in this bill is something we've been working on for a long period of time, and will allow people not to be punished for their generosity, which has been the case before. The bill directs the FAA to update regulations and policies related to the selection and training and designation of pilot examiners. Here's a big problem, and I experienced this personally just about 3 months ago. They're called DPE, Designated Pilot Examiners. There aren't enough of them around, and what we did with this bill was add a new form of inspecting pilots that's going to allow one examiner to do twice as many pilots. And that's something that is, here it is in this bill. Now, without the proper examiners, we don't get the commercial pilots are prevented from obtaining the recurring qualification, and flight schools are prevented from graduating students. Because there is a problem right now in the problem of numbers of people who are out there who have passed and want to take examinations and are not able to do it. It also addresses the problem of contract towers. Now, contract towers, most of the towers that you see around the country, the largest ones, are called FAA towers. However, some of them are contract towers, so they are contracted with the private sector. Well, this is good. They do a good job. And I would just suggest, though, that if we had not allowed for these contract towers, we wouldn't have, in my state of Oklahoma, some 7 towers that are out that would be out there. Now, if 2 of those contract towers are in the cities of Stillwater and Norman, Oklahoma. Well, Stillwater happens to be the home of Oklahoma State University, Norman, Oklahoma University. Now, I suggest to you, Mr. Chairman, on game day, if you're in there going in with sometimes up to 1,000 aircraft, and if you didn't have a tower on there, how is that going to work? Well, that's a recognition that that's a problem that needs to be dealt with, and that's in this bill. And it also affects a lot of the airports that are adjacent to military bases. It updates the FAA's dated benefit process, ensuring communities invest resources in without just unnecessary paperwork. The FAA reauthorization unlocks the economic growth potential of aviation and provides to local communities. We had in Oklahoma, not far from Tulsa, actually, is a very small community called Bristow. And Bristow had 2 large industries who were wanting to move in there and were not able to do it, and were making a decision to go not just to another community in Oklahoma, but to another state. It wasn't as far as Alaska, but it was not too far away from Oklahoma. And so what we were able to do is leverage the state funding to put in the improvements to the airport. And I was there during the dedication, and those 2 very large industries are moving in. People don't realize what an airport means to a local community in rural America. And so this has provisions in there that will allow that to take place. Then the other one I just want to mention, if you're in a general aviation airport environment, now that's not like DFW or Dulles, one of those. It's the smaller ones. And in the chair's state of Alaska, that's about all they have up there. And if you are in that type of an environment, then you don't have if you get federal funds, and they all do get federal funds, then if they don't use that in a general aviation airport, it automatically, under current law, goes to DFW or one of the giant airports. And under this, it's going to guarantee it will go to another general aviation airport, which is a huge win. Well, our nation's aviation industry is facing a dire shortage of pilots. We have language in here that's going to be helpful. Now, we all know about the problems. Those of us particularly are serving on the Senate Armed Services Committee about the pilot shortage that we have. We have some 2,000 pilots right now. They're actually fighter pilots that are short. One of the problems is that during the 8 years of the Obama administration, in the process of starving the military, they were not allowing their pilots in the Navy and in the Air Force to fly more than 12 hours a month. And this was something that can't be done. And consequently, they were in that position of not being able to have them do it. Well, in this bill, we're starting out and actually have language as a pilot program to allow students in their high schools to go through ground school, to get people so that they are interested in aviation. All that is in this bill. The program's just a wide array of public and private sector stakeholders are dedicated to promoting aviation and an accessible future career path for pilots. So I applaud the FAA's the reforms in the FAA process and for certifying aircraft and aircraft products. One of the problems we've had is out there is that people who are building, and I'm talking about major builders or experimental builders, building aircraft and then not being able to get them certified because of the long process and certification. We have shortcutted that and have the same amount of requirements, but I've done it in this bill so that we'll be able to almost double the number of certifications. So that's happening right now, and I want to thank Senator Thune and Senator Nelson and the committee for acknowledging that we finally have to do it. For 10 years now, I've been sitting around waiting for a reauthorization bill and been talking to people and about what the consequences are. And now, finally, after about 30 years, we have a reauthorization bill that is a 5-year bill. We're going to be voting on it shortly. It's going to be a great improvement. And so other things are happening here. We are passing things. We are being productive, and we'll continue to do so as soon as this fiasco is over, the challenges to our fine Justice Kavanaugh. With that, I yield the floor.